Victims of abuse fixate on tongues, eyelashes. What are they talking about? Wedge-shaped objects. It indicates that they don't have a feeling of control in their life. I'd be very concerned about the mental state of the artist. Did you notice any changes in Emily's style? The freeform skull with its storm-clouded eye sockets. Everyone's seen surrealist paintings. Dolly, the guy who painted the dripping clocks. She wasn't completely finished when she died. Self-portrait. I wonder, though, if you asked her why she was painting something so disturbing. I'm still getting used to this new microphone setup. Continue to bear with me as we continue to figure this out together. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of our book club series. If you're new here and you don't know who I am, my name is Brooke. I have different types of content on my channel. What you are watching right now is a continuation of our book club series. We're reading The Pact by Jodi Picoult. We read chapters of the book together, and then we discuss the characters, the drama, and our opinions about what we think might happen. So if you enjoy books and book discussions, then stick around because you will definitely enjoy this type of content. If you want to catch up to where we're at right now in the book and the discussion, there is a playlist on my channel called Book Club The Pact. I will link that. Let's see, it would be, I gotta do it backwards. I'm having a slow day. So that playlist will either be linked in this corner or this corner, one of those corners, if you want to catch up to where we're at. Or if you prefer to just watch the last few videos leading up to this one and jump in from there, you're welcome to do that as well. However you choose to catch up, we would love to have you join in with us. I always do a quick recap of the last few sentences that we read in the last video, just so that we're all up to speed and everybody knows what's going on. Other than that, today is reading number 26. No, today is reading number 27. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. Look at me. I have my manicure done. I did some makeup today. I have like a cute little fit going on. So I'm proud of myself for that. Get your hot tea, get your decaf, get your glass of wine, whatever it is that you like to enjoy. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this story with me. So when we ended, we are back in the courtroom, and Barry, the prosecution attorney, is cross-examining this doctor. I'm just going to read this last paragraph, and then we will move on to the next section. You did not interview Chris Hart. He was alive and available, and yet never even consulted, even though he was the best witness you had on Emily's behavior prior to her death. Short of Emily herself, that is. Barry pinned the witness with her gaze. And you couldn't interview Emily, could you? I need to get a clip-on microphone because a bitch be moving a whole lot. I move constantly, so it's hard to know where to put this damn thing. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Kim Kinley was or is Emily's art teacher. Kim Kinley appeared for her brief sojourn in court, wearing a tie-dyed caftan stamped with 100 small handprints. Isn't this great? She said to the bailiff escorting her to the stand. The kindergartners gave it to me. Jordan established her credentials and then asked how Miss Kinley knew Emily Gold. I taught her art throughout high school, she said. Emily was incredibly talented. You have to understand, as a specials teacher, I see 500 kids a day. Most of them just parade through the art room and leave a mess. There are a handful who stick with it and have a true affinity for the subject. Maybe one or two of them even has talent. Well, Emily was the rarest of jewels. They come along once every 10 years. I figure a student who not only loves art, but knows how to use her abilities to their best advantage. She sounds very special. Talented, Kim said. and dedicated. She spent all her free time in the art room. She even had her own easel stand in the back. Jordan lifted a series of canvases that the bailiff had brought in along with Miss Kinley. "I have here several paintings to enter into evidence," he said, waiting until they were examined by Barry and duly tagged by the clerk. "Can you walk us through these paintings?" "Sure. The boy with the lollipop is the one she did in 9th grade. The 10th grade picture, the mother and child, is more developed, you see, in the facial structure, more lifelike. These subjects are also more three-dimensional. This third painting, well, it's clear that Chris was the subject." "Chris Hart?" Kim Kinley smiled. "Mr. McAfee," she said, "can't you tell?" "I can," he assured her, but the court record can't." "I can," he assured her, but the court can't. The court record can't." "Well then, yes, Chris Hart." Anyway, Emily captured the expression on the subject's face, as well as the realism of the features. As a matter of fact, Emily's work always reminded me a little of Mary Cassatt. "Okay," Jordan said. "Now you've lost me. Who's Mary Cassatt?" "A 19th century painter who often used mothers and children as subjects. Emily did too. And she also showed the same attention to detail and emotion. There was a lot of heart there from day one, but as she progressed from 9th grade to 12th grade, I stopped seeing what she was thinking of her subjects and saw instead what the subject was thinking of being a subject. That's something you rarely see in amateur painters, Mr. McAfee. It's a measure of real refinement." "Did you notice any changes in Emily's style?" "As a matter of fact, I did. Last fall, she was working on a painting that was so dramatically different from her usual work. It really surprised me." Jordan drew out the final painting to enter it into evidence. The free-form skull, with its storm-clouded eye sockets and lolling tongue, caught the jury's attention. One woman covered her hand with her mouth and said, "Oh my." "That's what I thought too," Kim Kinley said, nodding at the juror. "As you can see, this isn't realism anymore. It's surrealism." "Surrealism," Jordan said. "Can you explain that to us?" "Everyone's seen surrealist paintings. Dolly Magritte." At Jordan's blank look, she sighed. "Dolly, the guy who painted the dripping clocks?" "Oh, that's right." He glanced swiftly at the jury. Like any random group from Grafton County, its makeup was a study in contradictions. A Dartmouth economics professor was seated beside a man Jordan would bet had never in his life left his Ortford dairy farm. The Dartmouth professor looked bored and probably had known who Dolly was the whole time. The farmer was scribbling on his notepad. "Miss Kinley, when did Emily paint this?" "She began at the end of the summer. She wasn't completely finished when she died." "No, but it's signed." "Yes," the art teacher said, frowning. "And titled. She obviously thought she was rather close to finishing." "Can you tell us what Emily titled this picture?" "Right here," she pointed. "Self-portrait." So Jordan's questioning the witness, which is Emily's old art teacher. As a piece of evidence, they bring in one of Emily's last paintings, and it's titled Self-Portrait, and it's this skull with a weird-ass tongue, coming out, and then, the eyes are storms. I'm trying to remember. Hold on. Let me read. Skull, storm-clouded eye sockets, and a lolling tongue. One woman covered her mouth. That's what I thought, too. So Jordan is, I think, bringing this to show that Emily was struggling, obviously, internally, with some things, because she painted a skull and titled it as a self-portrait. So basically the art teacher is just talking about how she was really talented. We're going to move on to the next section. For a minute, Barry Delaney stared at the painting, her chin resting in her hand. Then she sighed and stood up. "Well, I can't make much sense of it," she admitted to Kim Kinley. "Can you?" "I'm no expert," Kim began. "No," Barry interrupted, "but rest assured, the defense has found one. I wonder, though, as Emily's art teacher, if you asked her why she was painting something so disturbing." I did mention that it looked very different from her usual stuff, and she said that it was what she felt like painting at the time. Barry began to pace back and forth in front of the witness stand. Is it unusual for painters to try different mediums and styles? Well, no. Did Emily ever try her hand at sculpting? Once, briefly, in 10th grade. How about throwing pottery? A bit. Barry nodded, encouraging. What about watercolors? Yes, but she preferred oils. But occasionally Emily would do a painting that was out of character? Sure. Barry slowly walked toward the portrait of the school. Miss Kinley, when Emily first tried watercolors, did you notice anything different about her demeanor? No. The time she attempted sculpting, did you notice any change in her behavior? No. Barry lifted the school portrait. At the time she painted this painting, Miss Kinley, was she acting markedly different from the way she usually did? No. Nothing further, Barry said, and she placed the painting on the exhibit table, again, face down. Barry is questioning the art teacher now, the prosecution attorney. I think she's just trying to point out that, Emily wasn't acting any differently. Her whole shtick is that Emily was never going to off herself, that she was never suicidal. That's her argument. Because they're trying to say that Chris did this to her, which we don't know if he did or he didn't. We haven't figured that out yet. In the lobby of the courthouse was a large swath of chairs, set like a joint between the two courtrooms. On any given day, the chairs were filled with harried attorneys, people awaiting arraignments, and witnesses who'd been warned not to speak to each other. The previous 2 days, Michael had been seated at one end of the lobby with Melanie. Michael and Melanie, if you didn't know or you forgot, are Emily's parents. Gus had been seated at the other. Gus is Chris's mom. But today was the first day Melanie would be allowed into the trial. Ooh, wait, what? But today was the first day Melanie would be allowed into the trial, having given her testimony. Gus had taken her customary seat, trying desperately to read the newspaper and not notice the moment Michael came in. Okay, so if you're just catching up, or you forgot, or you just skipped a video, whatever, Michael and Gus kind of had a little bit of a little romantic situation. They were just having lunch dates and shit. And then Michael kissed Gus. I always tell myself I'm not going to explain this every time. And I do it anyways. Gus is Chris's mom. Her husband is, God, what the fuck is his name? Whatever, she's married to Chris's dad. And then Melanie and Michael are married and they're Emily's parents. Right? Okay. And Chris is on trial for the murder of Emily, even though we don't actually know if he did it or not. All right, great. Gus had taken her customary seat, trying to desperately read the newspaper and not notice the moment Michael came in. So Gus is just has been avoiding Michael because I guess, I don't know, the trial started and shit got weird. Kind of stopped that whole relationship ever since the trial has picked up because shit's getting real, So she's in the courtroom. And then Michael comes in and she's just doing one of these, you know, you've done one. I've done those. You've done one of those. One of these, you're just pretend like you can't see that person when they come in, As he sat down next to her, she folded the paper. You shouldn't, she said. Shouldn't what? Sit here. Why? As long as we say nothing that has, why? As long as we say nothing that has bearing on the case, it's okay. So he fucking goes and sits right next to her. He don't seem to give a shit. Gus closed her eyes. Michael, the two of us breathing the same air in this room has bearing on the case. Just the fact that you are you and I am me. Have you seen Chris? No, I'm not going tonight. Gus turned, an afterthought. Are you? I don't think it would be right, he said, especially if I testify today. Gus smiled faintly. You have a strange notion of morality. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. It's just that you're already testifying for the defense. Chris would want to thank you personally for that. Exactly. I'm testifying for the defense. And tonight I'll probably go out and get drunk so I can forget I did it. Gus turned in her seat. Don't, she said, laying her hand on his arm. Don't. Let's just take this in for a second. The dead girl's dad, Emily's dad, is about to testify for Chris's defense. This has pissed off basically everybody on quote unquote Emily's side, if you're taking sides here, whatever. So Melanie, Emily's mom, of course, is livid, pissed as fuck. Her husband, Michael, is going to, I guess, basically take up for Chris. They're prosecuting Chris for Emily's murder, even though it hasn't been, I mean, innocent until proven guilty, right? Like, why are we just assuming that he murdered her? I don't know. That confuses me. Get on the witness stand and take up for Chris instead of taking up for his daughter. That surprised everyone. I guess he just feels like his life is in shambles. Can't really blame the man. But, here's the thing. It's like he must believe that he is doing what's right. He must actually believe that Chris is innocent and not want Chris to go to jail because he's only, 16? Chris is 16 or 17. If he believes that he is innocent, then obviously he wouldn't, if he's a good person, he wouldn't want Chris to go to jail for the rest of his life so young, for something that he didn't do. How are y'all feeling at this moment? Put it in the comments. Let me know your opinions. Is this driving you insane that they haven't told us what happened yet? Well, anyways, Michael believes that for whatever reason, we don't know why, that Chris is innocent and that he, in fact, did not murder Emily. So he is going to take up for Chris. And he's just talking to Gus about that and saying, like, he probably feels like shit about it. You know what I mean? Because his daughter is dead. We don't know if she was murdered or not. But the point is, like, you would assume that he would be testifying for the prosecution, right? The trial for the murder, quote unquote, murder of his daughter. But we don't even know. See, this is driving me crazy. All right. So anyways, probably having all these conflicting feelings. Melanie's pissed as fuck at him. They're not sleeping in the same bed. Well, he's probably sleeping on the couch. His marriage is probably in shambles. I'm sure he's been sleeping on the couch for a while. He's just like feeling all of the things. Exactly. I'm testifying for the defense. And tonight I'll probably go out and get drunk so I can forget I did it. He's just like confiding in Gus. Because again, they have like this weird romantic friendship situationship going on. And Gus turns and she's like, touches his arm. Don't, she said, laying her hand on his arm. Let's keep reading here. They both looked down at it, radiating heat. Talking about his arm. Or her arm on his arm. Radiating heat. Michael covered her hand with his own. Will you come out with me instead? He asked. Gus shook her head. I have to go to the jail, she said gently, for Chris. Michael glanced away. You're right, he said evenly. You should always do what's right for your child. And he stood up and walked down the hall. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Whoa. I wonder if he's like, okay, pause again, because I have some shit to say. I wonder if he's playing devil's advocate. I wonder if, I feel like he is pretending. For some reason, I feel like he covered her hand with his own and he asks her, Gus, will you come out with me instead? Because he's just like having a shit day, right? Talking about going out later tonight. And he wants her to come with him. And she's like, no, I have to go to the jail, she said gently, for Chris. Because, as we know, the reason that they formed this whole situationship was because they were both going to the jail to visit Chris while he's been awaiting his trial. And they bumped into each other and then the rest is history. And they've been hanging out, right? So she's like, no, sorry, I can't. I'm going to go to the jail tonight to visit Chris. Obviously, that's my son. I have to. Can't go out with you. Sorry about it. And then Michael's he glanced away. You're right, he said evenly. You should always do what's right for your child. And he stood up and walked down the hall. That comment makes me think that maybe he's going to change his mind at the last minute or something. What do you guys think? Comment below and let me know. Miss Vernon, Jordan said, "You're an art therapist." "That's right." "Can you tell me what that is?" He smiled engagingly. "We don't get a lot of art therapists here in New Hampshire." In fact, Sandra Vernon had been flown in from Berkeley. She had a California tan, short platinum hair, and a PhD in psychology from UCLA. "Well, we work in the mental health field. Usually we're called in and we issue directives where we ask the client to draw something specific, like a house or a tree or a person. And based on what they draw and the style in which they complete the drawing, we can tell things about their psychological health." "That's incredible," Jordan said, truly amazed. "You can look at stick figures and see what's going on in someone's mind?" So we're back on the stand again, on the witness stand again. And this time, Jordan, Chris's defense attorney, is interviewing this art therapist lady named Miss Vernon. "Absolutely. With very young children who don't have the words to tell us things, we can discover whether they've been sexually or we can discover whether they are being sexually or physically abused. Things like that." "Have you worked with teens?" "On occasion, yes." Jordan moved behind Chris, quite intentionally placing his hand on Chris's shoulder. "Have you worked with deeply depressed and suicidal teens?" "Yes." "Can you look at an adolescent's drawing and find suggestions of sexual abuse or suicidal tendencies?" "Yes," Sandra said. "Pictures can sometimes depict unconscious feelings that are being repressed, too raw to come to the surface in any other way." Huh, that's interesting. Really interesting. Pictures can sometimes depict unconscious feelings that are being repressed, too raw to come to the surface in any other way. But it makes a lot of sense. So, you may meet a child who is not acting out, but then look at one of her pictures and see there is a huge disturbance in her life. Certainly. Jordan walked to the exhibit table and picked up the painting that Emily had done of a mother and a child in 10th grade. "Can you tell me the frame of mind of the person who painted this picture?" Sandra pulled a pair of cat's eye glasses from her pocket and settled them on her nose. "Well, this looks like the work of a stable, well-adjusted person. You can see that the face and hands are all well proportioned, that there's a strong element of realism, that nothing seems to be truly out of the ordinary or exaggerated. There are bright colors used." "Huh. Okay." Jordan lifted the portrait of the school. "How about this one?" So Jordan is showing this art therapist lady Emily's two portraits or whatever. Well, a couple of Emily's portraits that she painted. And first he shows her the one of like Emily did with a mother and a child. And then he pulls up this other one, this self-portrait, the school self-portrait that we just talked about. And he's asking this therapist lady to analyze this picture that Emily painted of her quote-unquote self. "How about this one?" Sandra Vernon raised her brows. "Well," she said, "this is very different. Can you tell us what you see in it?" "Sure. First off, there's a school. That would immediately say to me that there's a possible preoccupation with death going on here. But even more telling is the way the colors red and black are juxtaposed in the background. That's a documented hint about suicide in many art therapy studies." Wow. Huh. Black and red in the background. Who knew? Okay. Also, there's a cloudy sky. Often we see paintings of clouds or rain when people are depressed and or suicidal. But what's even more disturbing is the way the artist puts the clouds inside the space where the eyes should have been. The eyes are symbolic of a person's thoughts. I'd say the artist's choice here of putting a gathering downpour in the eye sockets strongly suggests there are thoughts of suicide going on in his or her own head. She leaned over the railing of the witness box. So she's like, Could you bring it closer?" Jordan walked the painting over and propped it between Sandra and the judge. Shit, where was I at? She leaned over the railing. "Could you bring it closer?" So Jordan walks the painting over and props it between Sandra and the judge. And this lady is still like looking closer at it. And she's like, what's really disturbing too are some of the details in the picture. It is in the surreal style. Does that make a difference? Not really, no. But the way the items are put together in this picture does. You can see here that although it is a bony skull, there are also long developed eyelashes and a highly realistic tongue coming out of the mouth. Those things send off warning signals in me about sexual abuse. That is insane. Wow. Okay. Sexual abuse? Yes. Victims of abuse fixate on tongues, eyelashes, and wedge-shaped objects. What? Also belts. Wow. Now this is some crazy-ass shit. Like, who the fuck knew? Okay. Fixate on tongues, eyelashes, and wedge-shaped objects. Also belts. Wonder why belts? Wedge-shaped objects. Wedge-shaped objects? What are they talking about? Wedge-shaped objects. Do y'all know what they're talking about? Can somebody give me an example in the comments, please? And belts. Somebody explain that one too, while you're at it. She squinted at the painting, considering. And the skull is floating in the sky. Usually when we see someone who draws a floating image of a body with no hands or a detached head, it indicates that they don't have a feeling of control in their life. Their feet aren't on the ground, so to speak, so they can't walk away from whatever is bothering them. Jordan set the painting back on the exhibit table. Wow. Miss Vernon, if you saw this painting in a professional capacity, what would be your clinical recommendation for the artist? Sandra Vernon shook her head. I'd be very concerned about the mental state of the artist, with regard to issues of depression and even suicide, she said. I'd suggest seeing a therapist. Wow. Holy shit. Jordan brings in this art therapist to basically try and prove that Emily was, in fact, wanting to off herself and having these thoughts. I never would have looked at a painting and thought of all that. That's insane. We learned like 3 different things. We learned that victims of sexual abuse focus on tongues, eyelashes, belts, and wedge-shaped objects. We learned that something about rain, which that makes sense, I guess. The skull indicates death. What if you just like skulls, though? You know? Like, what if you just like skulls? But I guess she titled it Self-Portrait, so that probably changes things. So she put like rain, like storm, like rainstorm going on in the eye socket. Skull is floating in the sky, usually when we see someone who draws a floating image of a body with no hands or a detached head. It indicates that they don't have feeling of control in their life. Their feet aren't on the ground, so to speak, so they can't walk away from whatever is bothering them. Floating heads or floating people apparently indicates that you feel like your life is out of your control. That's crazy. Did y'all know that? This therapist lady is like saying that whoever painted this, because I don't even think she knows anything about it. I think they just brought her in as a witness, like a professional, you know, in the field or whatever. Basically saying whoever painted this needs therapy. They're struggling. And now we're moving on to the next section. Melanie shifted in her seat. It was the first day she'd been allowed to hear testimony since her own stint as a witness was over. And of all the testimonies that she wanted to hear, this woman from Berkeley had to be the most upsetting. Tongues, eyelashes, wedge-shaped objects, warning signals, sexual abuse. So these are just like, she's just like internal here. Melanie, Emily's mom. Her hands clenched in her lap. Oof. And she clearly remembered the feel of Emily's journal, the one that she'd found tucked behind the rotted panel of the closet. The one she'd fed to the fire. Yeah, so if y'all missed that episode, Melanie, Emily's mom, after Emily had passed, was just like going through Emily's things in her bedroom, just like, you know, just trying to figure out, just missing her daughter and like looking at her things. And she finds Emily's old diary like hidden away in her closet. And she fucking burns it. But the whole diary is basically a shitstorm of like evidence. Emily mentions in it that she's pregnant, and she mentions in it that Chris doesn't know that she's pregnant, and like all this stuff that could have been used in the trial and like investigation. She threw it in their fireplace because I'm trying to remember why exactly. But I mean, she was mourning the loss of her daughter. She's pissed off. She's mad, like whatever. I don't remember exactly why, but she throws it in the fireplace because she's like, fuck everybody and everything. Like nobody knows about the diary, just Melanie. So yeah, she's just like remembering Emily's journal that she found. The one that she'd found tucked behind the rotted panel of the closet, the one that she'd fed to the fire. Probably one of the biggest pieces of evidence in this whole trial. All right, let's keep going. The one she'd fed to the fire, the one she'd read through to the end. The one she'd read through to the end. Melanie pushed past the other people in her row and stumbled out of the courtroom, past Gus Hart and her husband and 100 other people, until she reached the ladies' room and was sick all over the floor. Woo! So Melanie, Emily's mom, is sitting in court listening to this art therapist talk about her daughter's painting, her daughter's self-portrait. And then she remembers the diary. I wonder what else she said in the diary. Ooh, I bet she probably I think maybe we forgot, or I don't know if we read this or if it hasn't been said. I don't fucking remember. But Emily probably said something about what happened to her in the McDonald's bathroom when she was a kid. She was sexually assaulted. And so I'm sure Melanie probably read that and didn't know about it before then. Anyways, so she's just remembering everything that she read in her daughter's diary and sitting in court listening to this art therapist lady talk. And she's just like, I have to get out of here because she's like feeling sick. She's just like feeling all the things. She gets up, she runs out of the room, goes to the bathroom, and barfs all over the floor. Melanie is going through it. God damn. Okay. So until she reached the ladies' room and was sick all over the floor. All right. And now we are moving on to the next section. Miss Vernon, did you go to art school? Yes, Sandra said, grinning at the prosecutor. Back when the dinosaurs were still around. And now Barry, the prosecution attorney, is questioning this same witness. But yes, back when the dinosaurs were still around, calling herself old. Barry did not crack a smile. So Barry is not fucking around. Isn't it true that you need to gather 15 to 20 slides of your artwork to send to an art school with your application? Yes. Could this painting be illustrating an alternative style to that art school to exhibit the artist's range? Actually, schools prefer to know that an artist is fairly consistent. But is it possible, Miss Vernon? Yes. Barry walked over and extracted 2 small plastic squares from her briefcase. I'd like to enter small plastic squares. I'd like to enter these into evidence, she said, placing the 2 compact discs on the exhibit table to be tagged. Miss Vernon, these are CDs taken from Emily Gold's bedroom. Can you describe them to us? The art therapist took the discs from the prosecutor's outstretched hand. One is a Grateful Dead CD, she said. A mighty good one, I should add. What do you see on the cover? A skull, floating on a psychedelic background. And what about the other one? Barry asked. The Rolling Stones, with the cover art of a mouth and a long tongue. Have you ever known teenagers to reproduce artwork that is important to them, Miss Vernon? Yes, we see that quite often. It's part of adolescence. So it's entirely possible that the artist who painted the skull might only have been copying elements from the cover art of some favorite CDs? That's definitely possible. Thank you, Barry said, taking back the music. You also mentioned you were disturbed by certain elements that you saw in the painting. Can you cite a specific source for me that says that clouds mean suicide? Well, no, it's not one specific source. It's the result of studies of many directives issued to children. Can you give us the name of a study, then, that says a tongue coming out of a mouth indicates sexual abuse? Again, it was a compilation of different cases. So you couldn't really say with any specificity that because there's red and black in a painting, this person is going to kill her. Well, no, but in 90 out of 100 paintings where there is red and black like that, we have found the artists felt suicidal. Barry smiled. How interesting that you should say that. She pulled out a poster and held it up for Jordan. So Barry's cross-examining Jordan's witness here. Objection, he said immediately. walking up to the bench. What the hell is that? He asked Barry. And what does it have to do with this case? Come on, Jordan. It's a maggot. I know you are a cretin when it comes to culture, but even you can see where I'm going to go with this. Jordan turned to the judge. If I knew she was going to pull a goddamn maggot up there, I would have done some research on the subject. I don't know what the fuck that is. I'm gonna have to look that up too. Oh, give it up, Barry said. This just came to me last night. Let me have a little leeway. If you put that thing up on the stand, Jordan said, then I want leeway too. I want time to find out wherever I can about Magritte. What the fuck? Okay, I'm looking this shit up. I can't do it. Belgian artist. Magritte was a Belgian surrealist, familiar objects in unfamiliar, unexpected contexts, which often provoked questions about the nature and boundaries of reality and representation. His imagery has influenced pop art, minimalist art, and conceptual art. So he was an artist, created the same type of art that Emily was doing in this skull portrait that she painted. Got it. Great. Now we can move on. I want time to research Magritte, Jordan repeated. Okay, so I guess she brings in this painting from this other artist. This famous artist. Oh, give it up, Barry said. This just came to me last night. Let me have a little leeway. If you put that thing up on the stand, Jordan said, then I want leeway too. I want time to find out whatever I can about Magritte. Barry smiled sweetly. With your knowledge of art, by then your client could be 70. I'm going to allow it, Puckett said. What? Barry and Jordan spoke in unison. I'm going to allow it, he said. You are the one who brought in an art expert, Jordan. Let Barry give her something to cut her teeth on. As Jordan stalked back to his table, Barry entered the Magritte poster into evidence. Do you recognize this painting? Of course, it's a Magritte. Hopefully I'm saying that right and not completely butchering it, but oh well. Of course, it's a Magritte. Magritte? He was a Belgian painter, Sandra explained. He did a number of variations on that particular work. She gestured toward the image of a silhouetted man, his conservative bowler filled with clouds. Bowler? She gestured toward the image of a silhouetted man, his conservative bowler filled with clouds. Can you see similarities between this poster and the painting Mr. McAfee asked you to examine? Sure. There are clouds, although Magritte's aren't quite as stormy, which fill not only the eyes, but the entire head. Sandra smiled. You've got to love Magritte. Someone does, Jordan muttered. So Jordan's back there, pissed off, bitter. I don't know how all that shit works, but I guess the prosecution and the defense are supposed to know all of the evidence that each of them is going to, bring up or whatever, so that they can, do their own research and form their own argument and all this other shit, right? So Barry, the prosecution, brings up this painting from this Belgian painter, this famous Belgian painter that Jordan didn't know about, and now he's pissed the fuck off. So he's just in the background, just making his little comments. It's just, they just make me laugh. Okay. Someone does, Jordan muttered. Was Magritte in therapy? Barry asked. I don't know. Did he receive therapy after painting this? No idea. Was he depressed when he painted this? I couldn't say. Barry turned toward the jury quizzically. What you're telling me, then, is that art therapy is not conclusive. You can't look at a painting and say, without a doubt, that if someone paints a realistic tongue, therefore she was sexually abused. Or if someone paints a storm where her eyes should be, therefore she is suicidal. Isn't that true, Miss Vernon? Yes, the therapist concluded. I have another question for you, Barry said. In art therapy, you issue a directive to a child or a teenager, correct? Yes. We ask them to draw a house, a person, or a scene of some kind. Are most of the studies that have been done in art therapy based on directives? Yes. Why are you supposed to issue a directive? Part of art therapy, Sandy explained, involves watching the person create. That's just as important as the finished product for divining what's troubling them. Can you give us an example? Sure. A girl who is asked to draw a picture of her family and who hesitates drawing the father or completely skips drawing his lower half is possibly indicating signs of sexual abuse. Miss Vernon, did you see Emily Gold painting that portrait of a skull? No. Had you issued her a directive to draw a self-portrait? No. So the fact that you are being presented with this picture now, for the first time, might change the level of certainty with which you can make assumptions about this painting. I'd have to say yes. Could it be possible, then, that Emily Gold was not suicidal when she did this painting, and that she was not sexually abused, and that perhaps, like Mr. Magritte over there, she was only having a bad day? It is possible, Sandra said, but then again, this was a painting that was produced over a series of a couple of months. I'd wager. That's a heck of a lot of consecutive bad days. Barry's mouth tightened at the unintended verbal slap. Your witness, I'll redirect, Jordan said. He stood up, walking toward the art therapist. You told Miss Delaney that you cannot say conclusively that any one of the disturbing things in Emily's painting proves that there's been sexual abuse or suicidal thoughts. This could be just another style she was attempting in order to get into the Sorbonne. But in your expert opinion, what's the likelihood of that? So this is Jordan. We're back to Jordan now. Pretty slim. There's a lot of strange stuff going on in that picture. If it was just one or two things, Sandra said, like a melting clock or an apple in the middle of the face, I'd say she was trying surrealism on for size. But there's a way to show off your range without throwing in a handful of different things that raise the hackles on an art therapist's neck. Jordan nodded, then walked toward the exhibit table and gingerly lifted the Magritte poster by his fingertips. So he goes over and he's like, picking it up. He's like, showing it to the jury, to everyone in the courtroom, like. Jordan nodded and then walked toward the exhibit table and gingerly lifted the Magritte poster by his fingertips. I think if anything's been proven in this trial, it's my own absolute dearth of knowledge when it comes to art. So you've definitely got me at a disadvantage here, but I'll take your word, and Miss Delaney's, that this is a Magritte. Yes, he was a wonderful painter. Jordan scratched his head. I don't know. I wouldn't hang it in my house. He turned to the jury, holding the poster up for their perusal. Now, even I know that Van Gogh cut his ear off, and Picasso's faces didn't match up, and that as a group, artists are often very emotional people. Do you know if Mr. Magritte was seeing a psychologist? No. So he might have been mentally disturbed. I suppose so. Might he have been sexually abused? It's possible, Sandy said. Unfortunately, Jordan continued, I haven't had any time to do any research on Magritte. But what you're saying here is that Magritte looks, to an art therapist, like he might have had some emotional problems, right? Sandy laughed. Sure. You also told Miss Delaney that most of your studies deal with directives. Is that to say you never look at random pictures to see if there might be a problem for a particular child? No. We do that every now and then. A parent who's concerned might bring in a piece of artwork done by a child? Yes. And you can determine from those pieces of artwork if a child has a problem? Often, yes. When you look at non-directive issued artwork, how often do you diagnose problems and later discover the artist did in fact need help? Oh, 9 out of 10 times, Sandra said. We're pretty discerning. Unfortunately, Jordan said, Emily is not here for you to give a directive to. Maybe, if she was, you could have helped her. But in lieu of that, and having seen this piece of artwork, would you, as a certified art therapist, have been concerned about Emily's mental health? Yes, I would have. Nothing further. Jordan sat down, smiling at Chris. I'd like to recross, Your Honor. So Barry gets back up. Barry stepped in front of Sandra Vernon. You just told Mr. McAfee that you occasionally do preliminary assessments from art that isn't directive issued. Yes. And you said that 9 out of 10 pictures which have disturbing elements wind up pointing to someone with mental problems that need to be resolved. Yes. What about the other one? Well, Sandra said, he or she is usually just fine. Barry smiled. Thank you. That's it for today's reading. What do you guys think? Who are your favorite characters? Who do you relate to? What do you think is about to happen? Put it in the comments. If you want to keep watching, I will link the next book club video somewhere up here for you, so you can click on that if you want to keep watching. I love you guys. I love that you enjoy this as much as I do. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Hit the like and subscribe buttons. Have a wonderful day.
How y'all feel out there? I'm light years, call me eons. When the snare kick in, the beat is neon. Lights, yeah, I'm feeling magnificent. Care less what I'm up against.